Newly re-elected MP Chris Lewis is recovering after a horsing accident, but now he is in good spirits and he's ready to get back in the saddle in Ottawa. Erie Shore's residents get slammed again, and the forecast isn't promising a reprieve anytime soon. A live look at conditions in Windsor right now. We are going to get more rain, but it's no longer a rainfall warning from Environment Canada. Colette Kennedy will have more on the forecast for us later in the program. Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. Thanks for watching. The Registered Nurses Association of Ontario is calling on nurses at Windsor Regional Hospital who have yet to get their COVID shots to do so. The group made the call to action after more than 170 Windsor Hospital staff were suspended without pay for 2 weeks for not getting their shots. And that's between both Windsor Regional Hospital and Hotel du Grace. Suspended staff will be fired if they don't get a first shot by early October.
Delta is a brutal virus. It's brutal. It takes very little to contract that virus. So to have any healthcare professional anywhere in any healthcare sector or any educator unvaccinated is a threat for patients and for students. That's the only reason, by the way, you have outbreaks in the schools. Any other country that has acted seriously on this is the government that has mandated this and not left it for healthcare organizations to deal with this.
The association says that it shouldn't have been left to the hospitals to require its employees to get vaccines, but that there should be a vaccine mandate from the provincial government. And that while Grinspan doesn't think unvaccinated healthcare workers should be fired, she says they should not be providing direct patient care. Meanwhile, a bioethicist we spoke with says that while freedom of an informed choice is important, safety comes first when in a hospital setting.
People within hospitals, with some exceptions, but not many, are vulnerable people, and that healthcare workers have a heightened ethical responsibility compared to maybe not all, but many other jobs. And so there is a different set of standards. So when we look at vaccine mandates directly within clinical healthcare, that is a different picture than shopping malls and gymnasiums and things like that. So we have to have a separate standard. And, you know, how does that play out? The way it plays out is that the free will of healthcare workers is really submerged for the safety and well-being of the patients.
The Ontario Nurses Association, the union representing nursing staff at the hospital, also weighed in on the matter today in a statement saying that it urges that all employers to not rely solely on vaccinations to prevent the spread of COVID-19, and that it supports education and addressing vaccine hesitancy, not penalizing and terminating nurses when we need them the most. It says it supports regular testing of employees as a measure that ensures safety for everyone, reassignment or other measures, and that it will deal with individual situations of declining the vaccine under the provisions of the collective agreement, provincial laws on consent, and the Human Rights Code. The Windsor Police Service and its board are going through changes. A year after they received 37 recommendations to address a number of systemic issues from the Ontario Civilian Police Commission, they have responded. In a 79-page report, police officials outlined 26 recommendations that have been adopted so far. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa has been looking into this report, and she joins me now live. Jen, a lot to go through here, but what have you learned from the update that the service and the board provided today?
Well, Kat, the report goes into extensive detail on what has been done in the last year and what's still to come. It stems from a number of complaints from members raising concerns about their workplace environment. Of the steps taken, there's now a committee that will give input on promotions. They are working on a strategy to increase diversity and recruit more women, as well as actively educate and train staff when it comes to human rights and harassment. Now, that just touches the surface of what this report goes into. The board met in an online public meeting this afternoon to discuss the report, but spent about 5 minutes going through the 79-page update. And this is the first time the public is really hearing about the changes they've been going through. These improvements are happening because of a 2-year investigation into the service and board. It was sparked by the commission after it received several complaints alleging a poisoned work environment and transparency in the hiring and promotions process. The investigation was expanded to include how a 911 call was handled at the home of former Windsor Police Chief Al Frederick in 2018. The call and investigation was first reported by CBC News several months after the incident, citing concerns about the lack of transparency by the police service.
Now, Jen, that's 26 out of the 37 recommendations completed. So where does everything else stand right now?
Well, they're still looking to have all 37 recommendations implemented. Some of those outstanding steps require external consultants and relate more to equity, diversity, and inclusion, as well as the promotional and hiring processes. Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens, who chairs the Police Services Board, was unavailable for an interview today, but the service's Deputy Chief of Operational Support did speak with CBC News after the meeting.
What we've learned is that we need to work together to figure out what needs to be done to create a better workplace, to listen to people, and to bring about change, a positive change. This is an ever revolving situation, right? You just don't stand still and take these recommendations and say, okay, we're done. You have to reassess on a yearly basis. You have to look at all your policies on a yearly basis. And take into consideration what works and what doesn't. Some things may not work and you might have to reassess, but you have to listen to the membership.
He added that consultants have been checking in with staff throughout the process. Town halls, surveys, one-on-one chats having all been happening. With 11 more to go, Police Chief Pam Mizuno says they hope to have all recommendations complete by April next year. Katerina.
Thanks, Jen. The CBC's Jen LaGrassa reporting live tonight. Essex MP-elect Chris Lewis is on the mend. This after an accident he had on Monday, falling off his horse while riding with his wife on Election Day. As Dale Molnar reports, the Conservative incumbent says the injuries won't get in the way of his duties.
Yeah, coughing isn't fun. And please don't make me laugh too hard.
Chris Lewis is still in pain from the injuries he suffered falling off his horse Gunner Monday, also Election Day.
I guess the worst injury is my pride. You know, my face is a bit beat up. I got a broken wrist and a broken foot and some broken ribs and a torn rotator cuff in my shoulder. But I'm on the mend.
Lewis says the horse was spooked somehow and took off, causing Lewis to fall. He says he was wearing a cowboy hat and not a helmet, but he says luckily he didn't sustain a head injury. He didn't realize how badly he was hurt right away because he didn't go to hospital until the next morning. But that night, though, he attended a small gathering of volunteers to thank them, watch the election results, and confirm his re-election. But he did not do media interviews.
I felt really horrible for the media that was, reaching out to me, asking me to do interviews that night. But I was in an awful lot of pain that night, and I was really in no shape to be doing any kind of acceptance speeches at that time. I didn't want to turn this into a story. This was never my intent to turn it into a story.
But Lewis issued a statement the next day and was doing media interviews today to set the record straight.
I know there were speculations that did Chris have a heart attack, does he have COVID and all those things. The answer is no to all of those things. It was just an unfortunate accident.
As for the horse, Lewis isn't sure what spooked him, but all is forgiven. And he says despite his injuries, he's back in the saddle at work, ready to take the reins again.
I won't be missing any work time. I've still got my 2 phones. I still got my computer. We can do the Zoom calls, and I'm excited to get to work. What roles I'm going to have in government, of course, our leader will come out and assign those roles, whatever it is, whatever roles he puts me in, whether it's the Justice Committee or international trade again, or Canada-U.S. relations. I'll do it to the very best of my ability.
Lewis expects it will take about 6 weeks to recover from the injuries. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Essex.
Final election results are now in for the 3 ridings in our area now that mail-in ballots have been accounted for, including the one watched most closely, Windsor-Tecumseh, where the Liberal incumbent claimed victory.
Well, you know what? We knew that the election was going to be a really close election. We knew that it was going to be a tough fight. And so, this is the first time where we've had to wait 48 hours, 2 days for the results to come in. We knew the results were going to be very, very close. So, it's been an interesting ride for sure, but just really grateful for the team that we have. Really grateful for all the volunteers, the work that they put in, because again, we all knew that this was going to be a very, very close race.
While CBC projected his victory around midnight on election night, it's taken a few more days for special ballots to be tallied. Kuzmierczuk had been ahead of New Democrat Cheryl Hardcastle by about 500 votes, but now with the mail-ins, he's extended that margin of victory to 675. Chris Lewis for the Conservatives in Essex won by nearly 6,500 votes, and in Windsor West, special ballots are still being counted. They're about 95% complete. Brian Massey has reclaimed that seat for the NDP, and so far he's won by about 8,000 votes. Erie Shore Drive is getting slammed again. The Chatham-Kent coastal strip is used to taking a pounding from Mother Nature, but the weather prompted a warning from conservation officials. They are urging people to steer clear of the area and warn that high winds could keep the road water jammed for hours to come. Our Chris Ensing is there, and he has more on this story.
Erie Shore Drive is flooding. Destructive waves pounding the shoreline, water crashing over houses. It's the strong south wind causing chaos. A handful of people live here year long. Some recently sold. One homeowner saying people are turning properties into vacation rentals, like this one here. But new owners face familiar problems. High lake water paired with fall storms. There's potential for disaster. These blocks here are part of the protective measures put in place by the municipality to keep the infrastructure intact. The water is supposed to go into that drainage system right there, flow towards a pump system that pushes it back into Lake Erie. This work was done while residents were forced from their homes in 2020. There was a fear the dike could fail and the road to Erie would collapse. A handful of people live on Erie Shore Drive year-round, with 80 members part of the property association. This drain is an example of the work property owners have done themselves. In May, fed up with what they call a lack of maintenance work done in the ditch, property owners took legal action against the municipality of Chatham-Kent. The court process continues, so does the damaging wind. This storm is expected to last into the evening, a flood warning in place until tomorrow afternoon. Chris Ensing, CBC News, Chatham-Kent.
While the rainfall warning issued by Environment Canada has now been lifted, Chatham is not in the clear. According to the Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority, the sidewalk along the river in the downtown area is expected to be flooded over this evening. And there will likely be flooding of several streets in downtown Chatham adjacent to the river over the weekend. Flooding of the basements of businesses along King Street in downtown Chatham is expected as well. It expects water levels to peak in Chatham on Sunday. Turning now to the latest on our region's COVID-19 cases. The Windsor Essex Health Unit says case rates are decreasing, attributing that to more vaccine coverage and more restrictions. However, hospitalizations and ICU admissions are up. So here's a closer look. Today, there were 32 new cases reported. Currently, 25 people with the virus are being treated in hospital. On Monday, that number was at 15. There are also 23 outbreaks in the region. And yesterday, the province implemented its proof of vaccination program. To ensure rules are being followed, the health unit today launched an enforcement blitz. According to officials, the focus is to make sure businesses are clear on what's required. The blitz continues into the weekend. Low supply, high rental prices, and inflexible landlords have made getting student housing stressful for many. That's why one Michigan student is staying at home for the first semester but wants to be in Windsor by the next.
Found out the hard way that nobody wants to rent to someone for 4 months. And it's like, okay, well, I could rent an apartment or something for a year, but what happens if COVID gets bad and then I get sent back to the US, and am I going to pay rent for that time that I'm not there?
She also tried going with Airbnb, but even that came with problems. Her booking was canceled. She eventually found another, which is going to cost her 2 to 3 times more than renting. But with limited options, that's where she'll be next semester. And Wright isn't alone. Other international students are also struggling to find solid housing without help from within the city.
Hey, CBC Windsor. Welcome to my student house. Come on in. Since I'm from miles away, I don't know actually if I land here where I'm gonna stay. So within 14 days, I checked out 12 places. So I was like texting whoever is available, which price range is available for me. A lot of students are like desperate this way because they don't know where they're gonna stand. It's a new country, it's a new culture, so they actually don't know where they're gonna stand up when they're actually landing in Canada. Each of my friends checked out 4 houses, and other houses that they checked, they actually didn't go according to my expectations because the pictures were like very good and showing that the house is in good condition, but when you go physically, the scenario is actually different. It's not as it is posted in the advertisement. So this is the house that I found that it is as it is, was posted in the advertisement. So that's what I went for. There are houses available, but they are a little bit pricey. All right. So mainly students look for like within $500 to $600, including all utilities, since they're students, so they have to minimize their costs monthly. So there are houses available which are like for $800 or $700. So for a student, it's really hard to maintain a house of $700 per month being a student because he has no income. Rather, it's just the expense that he's doing, and he's also paying a huge amount of tuition fee to the universities. So comparing on that, there are really little houses according to the price range you want.
So I used to live in Res. I'm an international student. First, I was on Randolph. That's one street next to where I am. The biggest challenge I faced was knowing if the rent is right for the housing. Being a new student, being new to the city is really difficult. Knowing if you're putting in the right amount of money for the place. I'm paying the same amount I paid for my last house, but I would say this house is at least 50% better. And I'm really appreciating that I was able to find the place I have now.
A team of scientists and medical health experts has released an important statement on pregnancy and pain medication. It's part of a study in the British scientific journal Nature, and it cautions pregnant women about using acetaminophen. It is the active ingredient in Tylenol and many other medications used to relieve pain and fever. CBC Health and Science reporter Christine Birak has the details.
The statement is backed by nearly 100 scientists and doctors from around the world. They insist a higher level of caution is needed when pregnant people use fever and pain meds that contain acetaminophen, including Tylenol. The authors don't have any new evidence showing the drug harms a developing fetus, but their statement does say a growing body of experimental and epidemiological research suggests that prenatal exposure to acetaminophen might alter fetal development, which could in turn increase the risks of certain neurodevelopmental, reproductive, and urogenital disorders. And they mention ADHD and autism spectrum disorder, which has been seen in animal models at high dosages. Doctors we spoke with say the statement is not meant to scare people, but there are around 600 products containing acetaminophen, and more research and wider awareness is needed.
It's not calling for not using Tylenol, but just sort of a reevaluation of the evidence associated with the safety evidence associated with Tylenol in pregnancy and how to use it in the safest way possible.
He adds a severe fever or pain left untreated can also have consequences for mom and baby. So the concern isn't around using acetaminophen for a day or two, but longer than 2 weeks may be a problem. To relieve pain during pregnancy, doctors say there are other things you can try first.
Try some stretching, try some exercises first, try some, warm compress or massages.
Doctors say pregnant people in pain should never hesitate to reach out for advice. But as with any medication, the same goes for acetaminophen. Take the lowest possible dose for the shortest period of time. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
A live look at our riverfront there. Some rain is still expected to come, but it does seem like the most of it has passed, though some areas are still going to feel those consequences with the Thames River expected to peak over the weekend. So Colette Kennedy, she'll be here right after the break, and she will have all the details about what you can expect. Stay with us. Colette Kennedy joins us now for weather. Colette, I don't know about other folks around here, but I personally am done with the rain. So are we done yet? How much more do we have to deal with? Talk us through this.
Katerina, sometimes the problem is we're done with it before it's done with us, right? We can't always control things. But no, in this case, we're going to be doing much better now. It's just the lighter kind of intermittent showers that we are seeing. The main heavy rain long gone, but so widespread in terms of areas that were hit hard with very significant amounts of the rain over this period of time, going back about 24 to 48 hours in some cases, as it still is affecting Eastern Ontario. So Petrolia, one of the worst that I've seen in terms of the amounts, over 150 millimeters, London 120. We know Lambton and Middlesex counties that there were some real difficulties there, and also some flooding concerns, state of emergency for portions of Middlesex there. And Aurora, let's point that one out at 130. How about Trenton? Way into Eastern Ontario, over 120 millimeters of rainfall there as well. So many areas, so widespread. Daytime highs 13. We're at 11 right now. Harrow coming in at 11 at this moment as well, and seeing the same thing for Chatham-Kent. And yet look at still in the 20s there into Eastern Ontario, where the system, the heavier rain from that system, still having an impact there. Still hasn't exited the province on that side. And then back here, we get this swirl. See that? That counterclockwise circulation around the center of the area of low pressure. So that's rotating these showers in, not only this evening, but into the overnight hours. Now, tomorrow morning, we will start to clear. This is 7 a.m. We'll start to see the clouds moving away. It will turn into quite a nice day. And I know we deserve it on Friday, and eventually we'll see that pulling away to the east and then opening the door for the next system. It won't be as moisture laden, but there'll be some heavier rains. Timing on this, look at this, it is Saturday morning. If you're trying to make some plans for the weekend, and Saturday's a day you want to be outside, let's make that for into the afternoon and evening hours. You'll have a better chance at having some drier conditions then. So those temperatures, when you're already as low as you are, it doesn't take much to go down to the single digits. So we go down to 9 degrees, 21, though tomorrow might even hit 22 the sooner we clear out there. Saturday, there's that next system. Just keep in mind the timing on that. And then I sort of like the way things look moving forward from there.
Yeah, I just like that we're still in the 20s. That's a relief for me.
Yes, I know, right? That's a real marker for me, too, of when that shifts.
Exactly. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
When we come back, royals in the big city. Meghan and Harry, they're in New York, so we're going to take you there right after the break. Chinese real estate giant Evergrande made a payment on its enormous domestic debt, but a payment on its foreign debt is still up in the air. And that's leading to fears that one of China's biggest companies could soon collapse. Freelance reporter Patrick Falk has the latest from Beijing.
Evergrande is China's largest property developer. It's run into troubles in recent months, partly because of a government clampdown on the property sector and to rein in risky borrowing. Its liabilities total more than $300 billion, and it's really struggled to handle that mammoth debt pile. Fears are that the rot could spread to creditors, including Chinese banks and overseas, and that it could potentially trigger a crash of the Chinese real estate market, which could then spill over to other markets, including Canada. China's government so far has resisted bailing out Evergrande, but most analysts agree that it will help guide the company through its liquidity crisis. But for the time being, until we get a clearer picture of the situation, it is going to remain an uncertain period in the days and weeks and months ahead for investors. Patrick Falk for CBC News, Beijing.
New Yorkers were treated to a brush with royalty this morning when Harry and Meghan paid a visit to the rebuilt World Trade Center.
She's so beautiful.
They were joined by New York's governor and the mayor and his family. The royals didn't make any remarks, but Meghan could be heard saying it's wonderful to be back in the city. Harry and Meghan are in New York for an event to promote vaccine equity, which will be held Saturday in Central Park. That's it for CBC Windsor News. For more news, check out our website, cbc.ca/Windsor, and you can find us on social media as well, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Have a wonderful night.